Namaste, and welcome to a new episode of Konnakol 2020, the series in which I show you something about Konnakol every day of the year. I am Carlitos from Slovenia, and today is May the 1st, which is International Labor's Day, or Workers' Day, or whatever it is that is called in your country. So, happy 1st of May. And here in Slovenia, it has always been the case that for the May the 1st, for Labor Day, we would actually take 2 days off. That would mean that May the 1st and May the 2nd were both bank holidays, and, work and school is off. So I thought, okay, let's use that as a pretext and have a 2-part series that we start today and we finish tomorrow about one subject that is really close to my heart, and that is theermanams. So first thing first, right? What is a theermanam after all? You've heard me saying that word many, many times in our past episodes, but what is a theermanam exactly? Well, in terms of etymology, it is a word that is related to the word for the number 3 in many Indian languages. But in musical terms, it can be widely defined as a musical phrase that is repeated 3 times. However, that definition is way too broad because that is a musical phrase that is repeated 3 times, right? But nobody in their right minds would claim that the opening bars of the first movement of Mozart's 40th Symphony is in fact a theermanam. In my own words, a theermanam is a musical motif featuring a rhythmical structure of 5 components, 3 phrases and 2 gaps. That is what a theermanam is according to me. Let's break that sentence down to be absolutely clear of what I mean by that. So, a musical motif featuring a rhythmical structure. Okay, let me stop right there. Why rhythmical structure? That's because theermanams not only are recited in Konnakol as just syllables of vocal percussion, but also theermanams are played with instruments, are even sung, also with lyrics. So as long as any of those theermanams maintain the rhythmical coherence according to one particular formula, then a theermanam it is. No matter if, for instance, you are playing different notes each time when you go, the first phrase, second phrase, it doesn't matter. As long as it has that rhythmical structure, that rhythmical coherence, a theermanam it will be. A musical motif featuring a rhythmical structure of 5 components, 3 phrases and 2 gaps. And I hear you say, 5 components, what do you mean? I know that theermanams are all about the number 3, right? That may be so, but in order to be more precise, we need to include as well the gaps in between those 3 phrases. So when you put them all together, because the gaps are as important as the phrases, we get a collection of 5 components. 3 phrases plus 2 gaps, 5. I have an analytical mind, so I think it's good if we approximate some kind of formula for theermanams. And I came up with this. PGPGP, which they stand for phrase, gap, phrase, gap, phrase. Simple. However, since the length of the phrases and gaps are not always constant, we need to make these phrases apart. We cannot just have 3 P's and 2 G's. That's why I proposed that we modify this formula, arriving at P1, G1, P2, G2, P3. Meaning, of course, that P1 represents the first phrase in a theermanam, G1 is the first gap, P2 the second phrase, G2 the second gap, and P3 the third and last phrase. For example, let's assign the value of 10 to P1, P2, and P3, and let's assign the value of 1 to G1 and G2. We could then write our theermanam like so. However, it would be quite hard to tell at a glance what is a phrase and what is a gap. And so that's why in Carnatic music there is this convention that I also follow in every video that I'm doing, that gaps, you write them between parentheses. And with that simple modifications, you immediately can tell, okay, that's a phrase, that's a gap. So we would write this theermanam like so. And with this simple change, you can tell immediately that we are talking about 10, 1 gap, 10, 1 gap, 10. And now I wanted to talk about two important characteristics that all theermanams share. First, the majority of theermanams you will encounter out there will have phrases of equal length. That means that, just like we saw in the previous example, let's say all the P's would have a value of 10. However, that is not a rule. There are many really interesting theermanams out there that do not feature equal lengths for all the phrases or gaps, and they're still theermanams. Second, the length of a gap will sometimes have a value of 0. That means that while effectively, technically there is a gap, you do not pronounce it because the value is 0, right? You don't have anything to recite or to play. So instead of writing something like 5 0 gap 5 0 gap 5, we would just remove the gaps and be left with a very standard theermanam, if I might add to this, which is simply 5 5 5. That is a theermanam in a way like using shorthand, because all the gaps are zeros. To illustrate these 2 points, let's look at this theermanam. Tadikinaton, 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 tatom tadikinaton, tatom tadikinaton, tatom tadikinaton, di. So the structure of this theermanam is 5 5 5 7 7 7 9 9 9. You can see that the 3 phrases which I have highlighted in different colors, that is red, orange, and yellow, they have different lengths, because if you put together 5 5 5, you get 15. Then if you put together 7 7 7, that's 21. And if you put together 9 9 9, that is 27. So the lengths of these 3 phrases are very different. What's more, there are no gaps in between these phrases. And that is because the value of those gaps is 0. So this is a theermanam, right? And if we would be to write this in all its components, then we have to add zeros in between the phrases, like so. Going deeper, you would have realized already that each of these phrases is a theermanam on itself, because you have the number 5 3 times, the number 7 3 times, and the number 9 3 times. That is a sign that there's a theermanam going on. But again, I have told you that the theermanam has 5 components. So where are those gaps in between? Again, we are talking about 0 gaps. So if we want to, as an exercise, to write all these gaps, then we will end up with a theermanam that looks like this, which is honestly crazy. Nobody would do that, especially because these 0 gaps do not add any information. You, with just writing the numbers, that's all you need in order to perform, learn, and this theermanam and go ahead with your life. So that is why we write this theermanam simply as 555 777 999. Before I go, I wanted to address the elephant in the room here, which is, are Carnatic theermanams the same as Hindustani Highs? And if you don't know what a High is, well, this section is not for you. I'm sorry. But I know there are many among you who have studied Hindustani classical music, such as me. And I wanted to address this question about, is it the same thing? Is it not? Well, unfortunately, the answer to are theermanams and Highs the same thing is both yes and no. Yes, because both Carnatic theermanams and Hindustani Highs serve the same function within a musical passage. They both have the function to reach a sort of climax, to reach a resolution, and in that sense, they're exactly the same thing. Carnatic theermanams and Hindustani Highs, they both have a ternary structure as well, right? You can tell that this number 3 is very present in both Highs and theermanams. However, that's where the similarities end. Because number one, when you write a T-high or when you learn a T-high, you always include the beat of the next cycle as a constitutive part of the composition itself. So for instance, tarikita-da, tarikita-da, tarikita-da. You would write it as tarikita-da 3 times. So that da, which the last of which is the first beat of the next cycle, it would be part of the T-high. Whereas a theermanam, you would write it as takajunu tam, takajunu tam, takajunu. You would not write it as part of the theermanam, that tam that you would, of course, perform. So it's a small but very important difference in how one approaches, how one understands these two types of compositions. And finally, T-highs follow a much stricter formula. And right here, I'm going to just put together 2 formulas that actually are for T-highs with or without pauses, which means that they are much strict in what you can do to them. They are not really flexible. Theermanams, on the other hand, by having this very simple 5-component structure, they're much more flexible. And as I said before, you can play around with these components. So you can perhaps have gaps that are increasing in value, that the second gap is bigger than the first, or that the second phrase is bigger than the first and the third is a multiple. You can do things like that in Carnatic music, with Carnatic theermanams. You would never do those, or at least I never encountered them in my 20 years of learning Hindustani music. So that's all for today. Tomorrow, as the second part of this special, I will show you a mind-blowingly simple way of composing theermanams or T-highs in any rhythm cycle with any length for any kind of music. And I think it's super powerful, super simple, and super fun. It's like really like seeing the Matrix finally when you see, oh, theermanams work like that. So stay tuned for that. Tomorrow, that episode will drop. And all what's left is saying thank you very much for watching this episode. If you like this, please share it with your friends, like my Facebook page, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, or write to me here. Tell me what you think of using these social networks that I have. And that's all. Thanks a lot for watching this very special episode. I have been Carlitos from Slovenia, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.